All right, so welcome to our viewers at the Handelsdagarna.se studio. Yeah, I'm sitting here with Babba Canales. She had an awful flight, or we had a real chaotic night. You were stuck at JFK, right?
Yeah, so in New York, when there is a little bit of snow, they call it a snowstorm, and they cancel all the flights. So I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to come, but literally my flight was the only one that didn't get canceled. So I guess it's meant to be.
Wow, and we're very grateful that you are here today. Many people here are very impressed with your career, and I have to ask you, because you're very famous for your career at Uber. How did you get your job at Uber in Stockholm?
So it was kind of random. I had just moved back from Berlin and I was about to start my own digital agency. I was 22 years old and very naive in my head. I was like the digital expert of the world. So yeah, I was meeting with a lot of people and kind of selling myself in as a digital expert to launch this digital agency that I had been working on. And in conjunction with that, someone from Uber was sent to Sweden with a mission to find a local team in order to launch its service in Sweden. So the international launcher from Uber was here and she was looking for people and for recommendations. And since I had been out and about meeting with a lot of people, she got my name from several people and sent me an email. And I remember receiving that email thinking she had sent it to the wrong person because she was like, "Hi, I got your name. We're launching Uber in Sweden and we would love to talk to you." And I was like, what is Uber? Let's start from the beginning. So I Googled Uber and I found a really ugly website with a huge black Lincoln Town Car, and it said, "You're a private driver, sign up now." And I just felt like they must have contacted the wrong person. I was in fashion and PR, so I didn't really feel the connection. But since I was starting my own agency, I figured I should meet with them because they could be a potential client. And that's how it all started.
Wow, as a salesman myself, I thought that was a golden opportunity to try to sell something if you didn't accept the job. But thank God that you did, because or thanks to Uber, you did the fastest launch in their history. You had a lot of different careers during a very short period of time. How do you feel that having these kind of experiences have formed you as a leader and also as a thought leader in like digital marketing?
Yeah, so while I've had a lot of different like titles, so to speak, most of my experience is within marketing and branding. So as a director of brand marketing today, I feel like I'm very connected to my team because everything that they're working on, I have direct experience from doing myself. So at least I hope that I can give them very relevant feedback. And my hope is for them to never have to waste energy on educating me on like how important social media is. I just feel like I spent my entire career just educating everyone around me, like, guys, digital marketing, have you heard of it? And I just want for my team to just focus on doing a really good job versus focusing on educating their bosses on why their job is important. Like, I get it. I know that their job is important and I'm willing to invest in them as individuals and also in their functions accordingly.
So, as a digital expert, if I may call you that, what would you say are the means that we don't really have in our society today when it comes to marketing or connectivity or in that area? Do you have any ideas for maybe the next Facebook or Snapchat? If you want to tell us, then I maybe can, you know.
Wow, big question. So yeah, I have an idea for the next Snapchat. Just breaking it here. No, I don't know. Honestly, I think that, and this is because I'm in like the industry, but I feel like rather than another like social network, we need, as marketeers, better tools for understanding the value of these social networks from like an advertising and paid media perspective. There is, and also organic media. I would love for a tool that allows me to measure my digital brand awareness across all channels in an easy way, like the same way Facebook Analytics works, but that would work across. Is that Instagram is very protective of their data, so you're not allowed to measure much, essentially. But I think that once they open up their sources a little bit more, we will start to see more brand awareness and digital awareness tracking tools come up.
So that's an idea I'm gonna start. Okay, cool. So you mentioned that your hopes are, or maybe that Snapchat will open up for future. What are your thoughts about how it's going to evolve, and are we maybe going to see some crashes in social media, and maybe that people will, you know, take an offense in being on social media or just getting away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what made Snapchat so successful was that it was the first social network where direct messages was key. So versus like showing it to the entire world, it was about connections between individuals, but on a digital level. Definitely see that trend. I also think that we are like becoming more aware of how we use social media. I think that the industry is moving towards being more smart with how you use social media, and that includes a lot of things. So one thing I think is gonna drastically change is the term influencer. I think that, and maybe this is just because I'm like been in that industry from the beginning, but like the way marketeers have been obsessed with sponsoring people with a lot of followers, I think is about to change. It's about it's becoming more and more about the actual people behind those accounts, more so than the number of followers. Anyone can buy followers, but you can't buy a story. So we see that a lot as we at Away work with influencers. We try to work with real people who have real stories to tell, being it someone who is a photographer or someone who's an art director or someone who actually has a passion for something more so than just someone who takes a lot of selfies and has a lot of followers.
I was I was trying to figure out my next questions because you gave me two at the same time. I want to start with your latest job, or your job as you have right now. It's with a suitcase company. It's not the most regular job one can have. Can you please tell us a bit more about your job today?
Yeah, sure. So first I want to take like one step back and like remind everyone that when I joined Uber, like I had never heard of Uber, and my friends or my parents had definitely not heard of Uber. My friends were actually, in fact, very worried for me. They were like, Bob, I'm not sure you should take that job. And my mom was really concerned. But that said, I think that speaks for how I make my career choices. I love building things up. Like, I have no interest in working at Google. I have no interest working at things that are already built up, and you're going to be one tiny, tiny function, probably in a very powerless position. So what really drives me is having an impact and being able to build something up, and that's what makes me wake up every day in the morning. And this opportunity with Away is, to me, very similar to what I went through with Uber, but in a slightly different way, because I'm reporting directly to our CEO, and I obviously have I have a larger team, and it's also I'm being part of it from an earlier stage, even earlier than I was at Uber. It's also New York based, which is fun. But yeah, I'm super excited to have joined Away. It's like quote unquote suitcase company, but we consider ourselves to be or at least become a travel brand. So while our first product is suitcases that are really dope and we do ship to Sweden, uh, we have larger visions, and I'm passionate about.
Um, you said that you love travel, and maybe you also have a very special key or a key place that is New York. How come you got your eyes up and open for New York, and why do you love that city so much?
So fun fact, I actually hated New York the first time I went. It was terrible. I was there for just 4 days, and I think that the first time you go to New York, you should probably spend more than 4 days there because it's a big city. Uh, but what got me to really much impact you can have at the end of the day when the company is based in the US and you're based in one of the smallest countries that they operate in. So I felt like after 2 years here in Sweden that I had hit the glass ceiling and I was ready for a change. And ideally, I wanted a change within Uber because I was so passionate about the company. So I spoke to my boss and just was very upfront about the fact that I felt done in Sweden. Definitely not an easy conversation to have, uh, but I'm very grateful that I had that very upfront conversation because that led to me later on getting a job offer to relocate to New York. And by the time I relocated to New York, I had to spend some more time there and visited the office and kind of had a better sense for what my like dream role would be in a city like New York. So I was very excited to merge my background in fashion with my passion for Uber. So I took a role as fashion partnerships within fashion partnerships, which later on uh, promoted me to lead our partnerships team in general. But that was really fun.
What would you say is one of the upsides of being a young person amongst very large brands and just in digital marketing? Do we have something that maybe like an older generation doesn't have naturally?
Yeah, I honestly think it's a great time for young marketeers to be alive. It's very interesting because since digital marketing, crazy enough, is such a new thing, a lot of people with a lot of years of experience in the industry aren't as relevant anymore. So I actually have had a lot of advantages from just being a young person in the marketing field since day one. I have been fueled with digital marketing versus someone who might have had 20 years of experience, but digital marketing or social media is like total like aliens to them. So I do think that there is a lot of benefits of being a young marketeer and being someone who really lives and breathes in those channels where you're looking to market yourself. Um, and yeah, I feel like more and more companies are understanding that now as well. I think a few years ago, it was still a little bit of an uphill battle for someone young taking more of like a leadership role. But I feel like we have seen a few role models doing so, and it's becoming more and more accepted.
Would you say that there are some disadvantages being a young person and also trying to, have an, climb in the corporate ladder, if you may say so, and maybe also as a woman?
There are no obstacles. Everything is so easy. No, I mean, definitely. And I could go on and on about these topics, but long story short, I think the biggest disadvantage of being a young person in this industry is that your boss is oftentimes not a young person. And I've found it very often that they can't really see the difference between me as an individual versus himself when he was young. Like, just because he didn't have a career when he was 22 doesn't mean that other 22-year-olds today can't have a career. And that was something that I struggled with a lot, when you're negotiating your salary or negotiating your title or whatever it might be, is that sometimes the person you're negotiating with can't stop thinking of, what did I do when I was 22? Or like, wait, I didn't make that much money when I was 22. Like, totally relevant. So I think what one needs to do is to remind yourself of the experience within the position versus just years of experience in general. And remind yourself that experience is not only measured in years, it's measured in relevancy as well.
I can really relate to that. I'm also very successful and young, so I understand. You have in an earlier interview said that you have really been inspired by strong and powerful women's. Okay. Who has been your greatest in inspiration when once in your life, but also in your career?
Yeah, so I actually find inspiration mainly amongst females like around me. I don't have much of this, like celebrity crush. I get inspired by anyone and anywhere, honestly. And I think my first inspiration was definitely my mom. And it sounds cliche, but what's interesting with that is that my mom and I are very different. My mom is a stay-home mom. She has never really had a job, I think. She's a housewife, like totally the opposite of what I am. Far from a housewife, unfortunately. But she inspired me so much because she's so brave and she has constantly put herself outside of her comfort zone, and that is inspiring to me. So rather than I seldom find inspiration in people who I want to be. For me, it's more about finding inspiring aspects and attitudes from different people. So I definitely look up to my mom's braveness for leaving her home country, her family, and her friends behind for a better future in Sweden. She's from South America. It makes me from South America too, but I was born in Sweden, so identity crisis. And is Sheryl Sandberg, who is the CEO of Facebook. And I guess most people have read her book, Lean In. If you haven't, read it, even you guys, not just the girls. It's actually the best book ever. It really changed my life because she talks a lot about rather than taking a victim role as a female in a male-dominated world, there is so much you can impact yourself with just changing your mindset. And that is so powerful because that's something you can change today without having to point at society or injustice in the world. And there are a lot of problems with society and injustice, but they're not going to make any change today. So we need to start with changing the world in both a short-term and a long-term way. So yeah, for me, changing my mindset was definitely a game changer.
Before jumping on to my next question, you said change in your mindset. Can you describe for me what kind of mindset that you had before, and also maybe where are you today in your mindset? It's a very abstract question, but I hope you can answer it.
No, it's actually a great question. I talk about this a lot. So growing up, I grew up with immigrant parents who didn't work, so naturally we didn't have much money or whatever. And I spent so many years just feeling really sorry about myself. Oh, why don't we live in a house like all my friends? Or oh, why am I not getting a new winter jacket? Or, stupid things like that. And you could spend an entire life focusing on what you don't have. because no one has everything. So even if you have all the money in the world, maybe you don't have love from your parents, or you have all the love in the world from your parents, but you don't have money, or whatever it might be. For me, when I started shifting the mindset from what I don't have to looking at what I do have, was the first time I became happy for real. And today I just walk around being so grateful. Like, oh, like being happy for the dog. Focus on those things and be grateful, and kind of like leave the victimizing role behind.
Great answer. You had a lot of awards, if you can say like that. You have been ranked at Forbes 30 under 30, which is a huge big deal. Number one top talent in Sweden, and top 10 superwoman. That's quite an influencer, you can say. People have really taken notice to what you've done and what you're doing. Ability when having this kind of, you don't like to say influencer maybe, but thought leader in that kind of field.
Yes, I mean, hiring you as my PR manager, clearly, after that introduction. Yeah, so it's nothing that like keeps me awake at night on like, oh my God, how am I being perceived? I try to not think of that too much, but in terms of being like, I aspire to be an inspiration for people to kind of showcase something different. I feel like for me growing up, there were a lot of white men in like leadership positions or like in the covers of business magazines, and I would only find women on like model shoots in magazines, like not in like career settings. So that's definitely something that I aspire to inspire, like, and showcase that there are possibilities beyond being like, I don't know, just trying to like showcase something different in the industry. And especially since I had a career in the tech industry that's very male dominated, for me it's been very important to really be proud of being a different person in that industry, not only being young, but also being a woman, also being a second generation immigrant. So it's nothing that like keeps me awake at night or that I strategize around, but I do hope that people who maybe aren't as privileged as some of us in here would find inspiration in seeing that you can succeed regardless of like social class or gender.
What would you say are your your keys to success, if you can say like that, and what would one maybe from our students here think about when trying to pursue a career and just find their guidance in lives?
Going back actually to what we talked about a minute ago, but mindset is so important. I'm gonna like sound like a broken record soon, keep saying that. But I definitely think mindset is super important. Also attitude. I think of that a lot when I hire entry-level people. When someone is applying for an entry-level position, they don't have any real like experience. So what I can look at is their attitude. Like what attitude does this person come in with? Is this a team player? Is this someone who is willing to like is ready to hustle and just like give their everything in a non-prestigious way? And I think that especially in today's generation, that's actually pretty unique to be a humble person these days, because millennials and Gen Z tends to at least have a reputation for being individualistic and really like in it for the title type of attitude. And I think if you can differentiate yourself from that and really being one of like a humble, hustling, hardworking person with a positive attitude, that's honestly going to be the biggest key to success. I just thinking back from my work experience, I never did anything with a self-serving agenda. Like I worked hard because I wanted to, and I genuinely cared about the companies that I worked at or the colleagues that I had. And I think that's the only true way forward.
Great tips. So if you were to do something different today, compared where you have been and where you're now, would you do something different with your lifestyle or lifestyle with your choices?
If I were to like pursue another career or something like that, yeah, definitely something I think about a lot. I like play around with different thoughts all the time. I definitely want to start my own company at some point. But then sometimes I'm like, what if I just bought a house in the woods and just like had no internet and just read books all day? That would be pretty nice too. I would probably go crazy after 2 days. But I don't know. I'm excited to start my own company one day. I think for me it's going to be important for the company to not only have a revenue purpose, and that's probably part of like our generation where we're also eager to have an impact in the world, and I'm definitely part of that crew. And so I would love to start a company that is a for-profit, but that also has a clear social good tie-in. There are so many social causes that I'm passionate about that I would want to work on, but through a company.
What would you say are the biggest mistakes you have done and or your biggest obstacles and how you achieved them or climbed over them?
I don't think through like I don't think of things as mistakes. Like I just think of it as life, and then I move on. So I just didn't like recall like a failure, so to speak, because I just like move on. But in terms of obstacles, I have definitely struggled with perception versus reality, and that's something that I've just like decided to not let get under my skin anymore. But definitely being like a female with an interest in fashion in a male-dominated tech industry has not served me well, because the perception is oftentimes that you are not as smart or that you're just like this fancy person in the room, and like I don't know, it's crazy. But I was reading a study about how the more attractive a man is, the more competent people perceive them to be. Well, it's the opposite for women. Um, so when you have an interest in fashion and you like to like, you know, look proper, it kind of like has the opposite, like it doesn't meet the purpose of your job. So that's something that I've definitely struggled with, and I've been like going crazy inside sweatpants. But like, no, that's not when I'm the best version of myself. So I don't have the answer for it, but I'm telling myself that the answer is mindset. So I'm just like, cool, I'm just gonna go with it and not let it get under my skin. And if someone has a problem with it, then let that be their problem. But that's obviously not how the world works. But I don't know. I would say that's like my biggest obstacle, like balancing perception versus reality, and how much should I care and try to impact that, and how much should I just like do my own thing.
All right, so that was my questions. We have talked about for about 30 minutes now, and we're gonna let in our wonderful audience here. I guess there's a lot of questions to Babba. So if you please just raise your hand if you have a question, and I will try to translate them if you want to. Or you can do it in English also. Yes. Okay, so I have to tell our viewers here also. So the question was, what was your most successful campaign for Uber here in Stockholm?
Yeah, that's actually when you said what's your best campaign at Uber, I was like, oh yeah, I have so many to tell. And then when you said in Stockholm, I was like, oh, because in Stockholm I actually didn't do many campaign. Like at the end, we did a lot of like stunts and like PR things, but honestly, what was the most successful for us in the beginning was to just like very unsexy marketing, but like promo codes. And like I was out there like talking to, business leaders and getting company codes and with companies to send out a promo code to their employees for them to try Uber, because the second Uber was recommended by a trusted voice, it had a much higher conversion rate than if we would just like buy a Facebook ad. So it was really important to go through word of mouth and like kind of like invest in word of mouth to amplify that.
Yep.
It said like that Stockholm, or Sweden, probably Stockholm most, is a city which has a lot of easy adapters. And do you see that that has been a big contribution to how easy it was to launch Uber here? And do you see differences between different cities?
Great question. So the question was, here in Sweden, we have a record of maybe having a lot of early adapters, and how is it different from different markets?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, that played a huge like smartphone penetration and unlimited data plans. Like everyone has that. It's like it would be more rare for someone to not have a smartphone. And putting like a credit card into an app. So that's why at Uber we later on launched PayPal as a payment solution, which was huge in Holland, in the Netherlands. They totally responded to PayPal versus inserting a credit card. What I would say with Sweden though is that although iPhone penetration and like the early adopter culture was here, we also had a lot of competition, which was really tough to tackle because Uber started in San Francisco with the simple thing that you can get a car. Congratulations, because there are no other services. Literally, there are no taxis, there are no apps, there are no buses. Like, I don't know how people get around. So obviously, Uber was magical. It changed the way the city worked. In Stockholm, the value proposition of being able to get a car was not enough. There are taxis literally everywhere, and all the taxi brands have apps. Most taxis actually are Mercedes. So, like, when I started, I was like, whoa, I never thought of it that way, but we have crazy competition. I don't know how we're going to meet our business goals. So what we had to do in Sweden was to build a really strong brand. So we had to create a lifestyle around Uber and making Uber like a term and a statement. Like, no, I'm not getting from A to B, I'm Ubering. So that was a really key factor and something that has become more and more important for Uber as the competition grows in other markets as well.
Yep.
I'm curious, but about what you have said about valuing being naive, and also what you have said connected to that about wanting to be with positive people. Because my thought on that is that it's also important to have diversity in your workplace, that actually people have different mindsets to oneself, and that you actually get questioned, and you get that kind of confrontation intellectually and with perspectives and so forth. So how would you find that balance that I suppose that you two are striving for?
All right. So to sum that up, I would say the first question was a value in being naive, and also a value in having a diversified workplace.
Yes.
No, and I love that you brought being naive up because I talk about that a lot, and I think it's super important to be naive. I actively work towards continuing to remain naive. but yeah, in terms of like surrounding yourself with positive people, but at the same time fostering a diversity among like your workplace and also your friend group, I would say, because I find so much influence within my friends. I think that's super important. I try to, when we are hiring for my team, it's not always just about who would be like, it's not always just about who has had that title before, like for the title we're hiring for. It's more so, okay, these are the skills we have in the team today. These are the skills we're lacking. Who can we bring in that will complement the team versus amplifying it? So we try to bring in experiences and different skill sets than the team has today. Because otherwise we're just running an army of mini-me's. And we really want to like, and I personally love people with a point of view. So that's something that I try to hire for as well, but also you can't only hire type A personalities. So trying to keeping a balance between different types of personalities for the perfect like team dynamic as well. Yeah, did that answer your question? Yeah.
Thank you. So when you need a business guy, call me. Okay.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first one is, you said that you were initially in the fashion industry and that was the industry that interested you, but you later on ended up in the tech industry. Do you think that was a coincidence, or was it just a natural choice of yours because you were so into digital marketing? And the second question is, nowadays we see a increasing trend of personal data security. Do you think that is a threat or an opportunity for the future of the digital marketing industry?
Great questions. So the first question was it coincidence that you started from fashion and then moved into tech? The next question was regarding data security and how it's going to affect marketers in the future.
Yeah, so in terms of moving from fashion to tech, it kind of, the honest answer there is that I had a lot of girlfriends working in fashion and they hated it. And was so combative. And I at work, people like to bully each other. That's sad. But then all my guy friends who were in like tech and startups, they were bragging about their jobs and it was so fun and they were eating pizza together at midnight and they were like all buddies and like had like an awesome time. And I was like, why are they having so much fun and why am I miserable? I need to like see what's up over there. So I decided to kind of like test the waters out in a startup culture to see if that would fit me better, because I definitely experienced like some like cattiness amongst females in the fashion industry where uh, instead of like pushing each other up, it's a lot of like keeping the others down because you're so afraid of like losing your position. And that was not for me. So that's why I moved into tech, and then I stayed in the startup world because I love it there. It's very collaborative. It's almost like a family. There are no prestige and like titles are less important. It's more about what's best for the company, what's best for this baby we're building together. And in terms of data security, that's a tough question because I think that I'm very pro it, probably because I'm in the industry, and I think that we can, develop communicating with. But it's also scary because not every company in the world has good intentions. So I definitely think it needs regulation, and it's a great tool if used with cautious.
Okay. And a final question before we're gonna sum this lecture slash interview off. No? Okay, perfect. Oh, yeah, of course, do it.
I wonder how the climate has changed since the presidential election in New York.
Also a great question. So the question is how the market or the environment in the US foremost maybe has changed with the new president.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking it because it has definitely impacted a lot of people, myself included. I hope I can get back into the country. But actually, I don't even know where to begin, but it, it's so sad on many levels. It's sad for every female in the planet. It's sad for, like, honestly everyone, because it's not contributing to making the world a better place. What's also sad is that the number of therapy appointments have gone up in the US. And that's just like, he's been a president for 2 weeks. Like, he's already caused so much problem and like health issues in the United States and beyond. I have like a female network in New York that I run, and it's like a dinner series with like females, and a lot of the topics are about the election and what we can do as individuals and as smaller groups. And yeah, I do feel a little bit powerless, but what's been positive is that I've never felt so, like, I never felt like at least when you live in New York, I think it's like a little bit of a New York bubble, but everyone is against him. Like, and it's crazy. Like, and actually the majority voted against him. The reason he won the election, it's because of the state situation, and it works differently than it does here in Sweden with the election. But the reality is that the majority of the people in the United States did not want Trump as a president, and definitely not the people in New York. So it's really amazing to see all the street rallies and the protests at JFK, the Women's March. I get goosebumps just like talking about it, and it's really powerful to see that we're not alone.
Thank you. So that was our last question for today. Before thanking you off, I have to say, Web TV at 1 o'clock. We're gonna have Kalle Schulman as a guest. So stay on there. And now, Babba, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much. A warm applause.